Whether you're designing for a company or your own brand, a well-designed letterhead helps reinforce a brand's identity. A well-designed letterhead is important because it reflects professionalism, builds brand recognition, and makes your correspondence look polished and credible. It's a key part of a business identity, ensuring that every document you send out represents your brand consistently and effectively. In this video, I'll walk you through setting up your document, adding your visual elements and contact details, and aligning everything to look polished and professional. We'll cover setting up your document, adding text, logos, and even add some design flair. So here I am in InDesign, and here is a letterhead document that we are going to develop in this video. This design is part of a series of branded stationery we'll be creating on this course for a fictional design exhibition event. To create this letterhead in InDesign, we're going to cover the following key steps. This is a methodical process that will ensure we create quality design in InDesign and not leave anything unchecked. So be sure to check the bookmarks in this video so you can jump back or ahead at any time. After this video, you'll be able to create a letterhead in Adobe InDesign super easy. So let's get into it. Now, the letterhead is one of the simplest documents you might create in InDesign. However, can still include some of the key formatting features to set up. So this is a double-sided letterhead. As I scroll down, you can see I have multiple letterheads with the front and back covers next to each other. When creating a letterhead, it's common to create one for multiple purposes. For example, the first one is a generic letterhead, and as I scroll down, we have some versions with different staff names at the bottom for a more personal touch. For this project, we're creating a letterhead for a fictional design expo. For the look and feel, we're going to take reference from the brand media kit that is included as part of this course, where we will be including some of the brand motif and color elements on the front and back. Now, what may immediately stand out here is this magenta text. Generally, letterhead designs are pre-printed on sheets of paper that someone can load into their printer to print new messages. To set up the design, I've used filler text to get a good idea of how all the other elements can work around the printed message. Now, this is not part of the design, this is just filler text. If I press W on the keyboard to toggle into preview mode, we will see that in preview mode the text is not visible, but is visible in normal mode. If I come into the layers panel and click the demo text, we can see that the name of this layer is in italics. If I right click on the layer and click on layer options, for this layer I have the print layer box unchecked. This means that this is just a layer to preview the text in my composition, but it won't by default be exported out. More on this later. If you were to take a look at this document and get all the assets and follow along, you can get access to this document from the course download folder. This download folder comes with multiple projects and a ton of assets and resources we will be using in this course. You can find the link to acquire the folder from the description. With the download folder open, click into folder 4 project, into the design expo folder, click into folder 2, event publication design, and open the event design InDesign file. Now this is a document that contains all of the publication designs we will be creating for this course. If we scroll down to the marketing collateral page, we can see a variety of documents. For this video, we are going to look at the letterhead. So with the selection tool, I'll click the letterhead thumbnail. Now I'll either come to the links panel and click edit original, or I'll hold Alt on the keyboard and double click on the worksheet thumbnail, and the document will open in its own tab. Now for this document, I'm using the font Base New. If you have not already downloaded all the fonts for this course, this is a free font that you can acquire online. To get this font, I would recommend you check out the course fonts page on the course PDF document. This is a list of all the fonts that are used in this class, in this course, and where to get them. Simply click the Base New link, and this will take you straight to where you can download it. Simply close this document, install the fonts, open it back up again, and you should be able to follow along just fine. So on the first page, we have some simple text formatting with some light visual elements, and on the back we have some subtle branding elements. And if I press W to toggle between preview and normal mode, in normal mode we can see that there is a few details to be aware of. To help structure and align my elements, I have used a baseline grid and a column grid which fits inside the margin grid. If we look in the parent pages, we have 2 parent pages managing repetitive elements. And if we look at the character and paragraph styles, we have some styles here. So let's see how we can create a document like this. So to begin, I'm going to come up to File, New, and create a new document. Now when creating a new document in InDesign, you can choose from a range of presets. For this letterhead, I'm going to go with an A4 sheet. So I'll click the print tab and choose A4. Over in the parameters, I'll set the units to millimeters. I'll make sure the orientation is set to portrait. I don't want facing pages, so I'll make sure this is unchecked. I'm going to set the pages to 2. For the margin space, I'm going to set this to 15 mil. I'll click down on the bleed and slug and type in 3 mils. Click create and my new document will open. So looking back at my previous documents, we can see that I have the pages next to each other. I've done this because I want to look at the letterhead pages side by side at a glance. So for ease of workflow, I like to put my pages next to each other. I'll come over to the pages panel, I'll click on the top right menu, scroll down, and currently we can see a tick next to allow document pages to shuffle. I'll click this to remove the tick. Then in the pages panel, I'll click on my second page and just drag it up and next to my first page. When I see a line next to the page, I'll release and that will snap the page next to it. And you'll also see this page will be immediately next to the page in the work area. Next, I'll come into the tools panel, I'll click the page tool, I'll click on page 2 and just drag it to the right, putting some space between the pages. Great. So now if I press W on the keyboard to toggle on preview and normal mode, we can currently see our bleed line around the outside of the canvas and our margin space around the inside of the canvas. Looking back at my final letterhead, if I press W, I can toggle off normal and preview mode. In normal mode, we can see the grid that I have used to structure the letterhead content. As simple as a letterhead may seem, it still requires a neat and ordered layout. So for this approach, I have gone for a 4-column grid to align things horizontally, and I've also used a baseline grid which will allow me to align things vertically. So now I'm going to come into my InDesign preferences, click on units and increments, and I'll set this to millimeters for horizontal and vertical. If you're following along, I suggest you do the same so you can match what I will be doing next. So back into my new document, I'm going to come over to the pages panel and double click on the parent page. And here I'll come up to layout, down to margins and columns, up will pop a menu, and in here I'm going to click on the preview box, and in columns I'm going to set this to 4, and for gutter space I'm going to set this to 0, and then click OK. Now, as well as managing my content horizontally, I also want to manage it vertically. I'm now going to introduce a baseline grid to give me some structure to align my elements. To do this, I'll come up to layout, scroll down and click create guides. In the menu, I'll be sure to click to turn on the preview. For rows, I'll type in 20. For the gutter, I'll set this to 0. Now, I've already got my columns set, so I don't need to include anything here. So I'll set these both to 0. I'll make sure to hit the check mark for gutters and margin. I'll click OK. And if I click on the page in the pages panel, the grid will be applied to each page. Perfect. So once I have my document set up, I can now start thinking about working with visual elements. So the first element I'm going to work with is the type. So to make it simple and straightforward, we'll start with the largest chunk of text in the middle, and then we'll work our way outwards. Next, I'll come into the Design Expo Brand Kit content doc. This is a content doc that has been created to help you follow along with all the tutorials in the course to get hold of all the text. If you want to get hold of this content deck, click the link in the description or click the link in the course PDF. So I'll come to the page for the letterhead. I'll select the filler copy, I'll copy this, then come into InDesign, and with the text tool, I'll draw a text frame from the top left across spanning 3 columns and drag about 2/3 of the way down my page and paste in the text. Now this text is only going to serve as demo text. This won't be part of the letterhead design, so we do not need to style this type too much. However, we could just set it to a default font that one may use. For this, I'll set the placeholder type to Arial Regular. I'll set the font size to 9, the leading to 14, and up in the control panel, I'll click the Justify button with the last line aligned left. So now it's a nice solid block of text there. I'll press Escape and then drag the text frame down to sit under the 3rd row, which should give me some nice room above to place the logo and other elements. Now I've got my body text, I'm going to drag this up while holding Alt to duplicate the frame and contents, and I'll place this at the top. Then back into the content doc, I'll grab the next piece of filler text, paste it into the frame, select all, and hit the right alignment type tool in the control panel. Now I don't want this big frame here to be overlapping the frame below, so I'll come to the bottom middle bounding box point and just double click on that, and it'll snap up to fit the contents. And I'll do the same for the left middle bounding box anchor point. I'll double click and this will snap it to fit my text. Nice. So this is going to be the filler text. This isn't going to be part of the design. So now I'll come into the layers panel, I'll double click on the current layer, I'll name this demo type, and I'll also click to uncheck the print layer box. I'll click OK. Then click the plus icon at the bottom of the layers panel to create a new layer. I'll call this new layer content and click on my content layer. And now I'm going to start to bring in the elements. So looking back at my finished design, the first letterhead is the generic one without any staff credentials. What we have at the bottom is a small number of details, the address details underneath, and a slogan at the bottom of the page. So I'll start with the street address. So at this point, we are now starting to deal with lots of text. When working with text in InDesign, you want to be careful. So at this point, I'll come up to type, scroll down and click on Show Hidden Characters. These are non-printing symbols that represent formatting elements in your text, such as spaces, paragraph breaks, tabs, and line breaks. These characters are essential for understanding the structure and flow of your text, but are invisible by default when working in a document. This is going to be useful to keep our text neat and clean. So for the street address, there's no need to create a new text frame here. To make this easy, I'll click on my address frame and drag it down while holding Alt to make a quick duplicate. I'll just place it down to the bottom roughly and pull out the text frame to give myself a bit more width to work with. I'll double click into the text frame and up in the control panel, I'll just set this to left aligned and I'll come into the content deck and copy the address details, and back into my letterhead, I'll select the text and replace it. Next, I'll come into the Design Expo Brand Toolkit. With the download folder open, click into folder 4 project, into the Design Expo folder, click into folder 1 Media Kit and open the Design Expo Brand Kit InDesign file. This is a brand kit document that includes all the style references we are going to include in our publication design. On the Brand Toolkit at a glance page, we can see that for the typeface, we will be using Base New. So I'll select the address text, I'll set it to Base New, then click the drop down on the family and select Expanded Medium. In this instance, I'll change the font to size 7 and set the leading to 10 up in the control panel. And now we have some fresh formatted text in our document. Now I could leave it there and carry on, but since we have now defined some formatting properties, I'm going to make a quick paragraph style. I'll jump into my paragraph style panel, click on the top right menu, click New Style, I'll name this Address, click to Apply Style to Selection and click OK. I'll bring my address frame down and just align it to the top of the second row from the bottom. And now that's looking pretty neat. Now before I move on, I'm going to need to copy this text and put it on the right layer. Earlier, I duplicated the text from above, which was on the demo type layer. So I'll press Escape to deselect my text, then select the type frame. I'll press Command X on Mac or Control X on PC to cut. I'll come into the Layers panel and make sure to click on the content frame. And I'll press Command plus Shift plus Alt plus V on Mac or Control plus Shift plus Alt plus V on PC to paste it back in place. So next I'm going to bring in this little tagline to sit at the bottom of the page. I'll come back into the content deck and grab the tagline copy. Back into my document, I'll click under the address and paste it in. Now looking at the text, right now we can see that at the end here there is a paragraph return. For this piece of text we do not want this, so I'll put my mouse cursor at the end and press delete to remove it. So right now I have this type with the address paragraph style applied. For this piece of type, I do not want this applied. This is going to have its own formatting. So I'll come into the paragraph style panel and click on Basic to reset the formatting. In this instance, I'll change the font to Base New, click the drop down on the family and select Expanded Bold, and I'll set the size to 12. So right now I have some new type formatting. So I'll click to select the tagline, come into the paragraph style panel, create a new paragraph style, I'll call this tagline, click to Apply Style to Selection and click OK. Easy. Now the idea here is for this tagline to sit at the bottom of the page on the margin. Right now this tagline is sitting right under the address. So what I'll do next is edit the paragraph style of the address above to push some space below this. So I'll place my mouse cursor at the end of the contact details above. Right now, if we look in the paragraph styles, we can see that this currently has the address applied. So down in the paragraph panel, I'll now hit to add some space after. I'll push this up to 9 mils, and now the tagline will sit nicely on the baseline. Nice. However, we will have to be careful here. If we now look back at the paragraph styles, we will see a plus icon next to the address paragraph style. If I now come into the paragraph style, right click on contact and click redefine style, we will now see that this space after has been applied to every single line in the contact section. Now the reason for this is because we have just altered the space after a paragraph. If we zoom in and look at the text, we can see after every line in the address, we have a paragraph return. So each line in the contact details is essentially a paragraph in itself. So after each line, we're going to add that space after. Now we don't want to do this, we only want to add that space after on the last line. So what we need to do here is edit the small block of text to tell InDesign that instead of each line being a separate paragraph, we want the whole block to be just one paragraph with the space afterwards at the end. So what I'll do now is place my mouse cursor after the line below the top bit of text, press delete, and that will bring this text up to the end of the top line. This time, instead of pressing enter to add a hard return, which will create a new paragraph, I'm going to press shift plus return. What that will do is instead of creating a paragraph, it will just create a forced line break. So now the top two lines are part of the same paragraph. So I'll do this once again. I'll click the mouse cursor on the line below, press delete to bring it back up and press shift plus enter to create a forced line break. I'll do it for the last line, add a forced line break, and now we have the contact details above in one paragraph. And the space after is creating the space between the address details and the tagline below. Now if we look carefully at the end of our text, we will see this symbol here representing a forced line break. So these are some of the small details you will need to know about InDesign. Things can get very tricky and very detailed when using text in this way. This is such a small piece of text, however, does require some care and finesse to get the result we want. Keep in mind, hard returns create paragraph breaks, and soft returns create forced line breaks, which allows you to manage blocks of text to keep them as single paragraphs, which allows you to add things like space after in instances like this. Now, this may seem a little complicated, but trust me, when you get your head around this, it's going to make using InDesign much easier. Beginners to InDesign may be inclined to create two separate text boxes to do something like this, but more advanced users would want to do this in one text block to keep things streamlined. So to finish this off, I'll press Escape to deselect the text. With the selection tool, double click on the bottom middle anchor point, and this will snap the text frame to fit the content. I'll press W to enter into preview mode, and now that's looking neat. So at this point, when all the text is in the document, I then like to start thinking about color. Now depending on your design, generally text is printed in black, but for this particular brand, we are not using black, but a darker shade of purple. Looking back at my final designs, you can see the color approach I took for this letterhead. Back to the brand media kit, here we can see the brand colors. Now we could copy and paste these into our new document, but to make it even easier, you can import the color swatch. So back into our document, come up to the top of the swatches panel, click the menu and come down and click on load swatches. Upon click, you will see a window appear. And here we can navigate to the download folder. With the download folder open, click into folder 4 project, into the design expo folder, click into folder 1 media kit, click into the assets folder, into folder 5 color, and click to open the design expo palette document. Upon click, we will now see the colors present in our swatches panel in a folder. Nice. Now I could come and select the text elements and change the color, but now I've created some styles, it'll be easier to do it this way. We won't have to select any type elements, and you can make sure you're on top of all your styles. So I'll come into the paragraph styles panel, double click on the contact style, come down to character color and change the color to midnight. I'll click on the preview button and we'll see the text change in the letterhead. I'll do the same for the tagline, change the color to midnight. And just like that, we have applied some color and we now know that everything is neat and tidy with our styles. Great. So that completes all of the text elements on the front side of the letterhead. Looking back at the final designs, we can see that on the front side, we also have some image elements. On top, we have a logo. Down below, we have a subtle line stroke. And on the far right, we have this texture running down the side of the page. So let's start with the logo. To do this, we can do it in one of two ways. The easy way would be to jump into the brand toolkit. From here, I can select the logo and paste it straight into my letterhead document, or we can manually drop it in. I'll just quickly do the latter. I'll press Command plus D on Mac or Control plus D on PC to place an image. With the download folder open, click into folder 4 project, into the design expo folder, click into folder 1 media kit, into the assets folder, into folder 1 logo, and click to open the design expo logo document. I'll just click and drag to draw a frame from the top left across over one column, and upon release our logo will appear. Now if things are looking a little blurry for you, come up to View, down to Display Performance and click on High Quality. So back in the Brand Toolkit, we can see that as part of the kit, we have a stroke effect. I'm going to include this in the bottom of the letterhead, so I'll just select the stroke effect, and back into the letterhead, I'll come down to the bottom, I'll paste it in, scale up across 3 columns to match the text block above. Here I'll place it at the top of the third from the bottom row, press W to enter into preview mode, zoom out, and now that's looking quite neat. Now for the last visual element, I want to get some subtle square texture. Looking back at my final design, I have this square texture on both the back page and the front page. So I'll begin by placing the texture on the back page. To do this, I'm going to jump back into the Brand Toolkit. On the texture page, we can see there is one linked texture here on the right for small squares. With the selection tool, I'll select the texture for the small squares. I'll either come to the links panel and click Edit Original, or I'll hold Alt on the keyboard and double click on the worksheet thumbnail, and the document will open up in Illustrator. So here is an Illustrator document where I have created a grid texture of squares previously. If I press Command plus apostrophe on Mac or Control plus apostrophe on PC, we can toggle on and off the grid, where you can see the structure I based this grid on. To make this really easy, we can simply copy and paste this texture right from Illustrator and paste it into InDesign. So I'll select all the squares, copy, and then back into InDesign I'll paste. Upon pasting, InDesign will automatically group the squares, so now we can treat it as one object. I'll place the bounding box up in the top left corner. I'll come up to the top of the control panel and make sure to set the reference point to the top left. Then I'll click and drag on the bottom right anchor point down to the bottom margin to the end of the third column. And upon release, I'll get a square texture where the squares roughly match my column widths. Nice. Now with the direct selection tool, I'll click and drag over the first column of squares. I'll copy and paste, and this will copy a new column of squares, but here I need to be careful. Upon pasting these are not currently grouped. So I'll press Command plus G on Mac or Control plus G on PC to group them. And I'll carefully place this to sit on my right margin of the first page. I'll press W to enter into preview mode, zoom out, and now that's all looking quite neat. However, the stroke line looks a little strange against the squares on the left here. I'll select the stroke and move it up to align with that square. So instead of aligning this stroke element to the baseline grid, I'm going to align it to this square here on the right, just so everything looks neat and aligned. Now looking back at my finished letterhead, in the top right of the back page, there is a logo mark with the tagline, Future Design. Now this is actually a logo lockup. I can come into the Brand Toolkit here and just grab this, place the mouse cursor in the bottom right, and then click and rotate it while holding Shift to snap to 90 degrees, and place it up in the top right and fit it comfortably. Scale up to align with the fifth square in the texture to the left, and that now completes the layout of our first letterhead. To finish off, I'll come and select the demo text, change it to magenta, and if we press W on the keyboard, we can toggle into preview mode, and that completes the layout of our initial letterhead. Nice. Now the true power of InDesign allows us to create and manage multiple content in one document. We just created a generic letterhead, but looking back at my final designs, we can see that I have some additional layouts with staff details. What I'll do to finish off the tutorial is show you how you can duplicate a layout and make modifications easily. So once you're happy with one layout, it's very easy to duplicate. But what we want to keep in mind initially is how are we going to manage the repetitive elements. Before we start duplicating pages, we first need to manage our repetitive elements. To do this, we're going to use parent pages. So right now, in the Pages panel, if we look at the top, we have one parent page with the prefix A, which is currently applied to each page below. So now I'm going to come up and right-click on my first parent page and click Duplicate. Upon click, that's going to open a new parent page, and we can see that it has been set with a prefix of B. For now, I'm just going to click back on a page in the Pages panel to come back, then right-click on the right page, click on Apply Parent to Pages, and from the drop-down, I'll select B. So now I have my left page with my parent page A applied, and the right page with my parent B applied. Next, I'll come to my left page and select the image elements. With them selected, I'll press Command plus X on Mac or Control plus X on PC to cut. I'll come up and double click on parent page A. I'll paste the visual elements on the content layer and position correctly. And if I double click on page 1 in the Pages panel, we can see that the images are now back. Nice. So next, I'll select the images on the next page. I'll press Command plus X on Mac or Control plus X on PC to cut. Double click into parent B. I'll paste this on the content layer and position correctly. Double click on a page in the Pages panel. We will come back to our composition. And now all of my repetitive image elements are on the parent pages on the correct layers. Excellent. So with my visual elements organized, I'll come into the Pages panel, click the first page, press and hold Shift and select the second page, right click and duplicate the spread. So looking back at the final designs, we can see that here is some specific type formatting applied to the staff name, job description and contact details. Now there are two ways we can go about doing this. We can do it the smart way or we can do it the longer way. In a previous video, we looked at how to set up a business card. In that video, we applied formatting to the type outlined by the brand style. One of the awesome things about setting up character and paragraph styles is that these can be copied and pasted from one document to the next. So if we open the business card template that we created in a previous episode, back into the event design document, with the selection tool, I'll select the business card thumbnail. I'll either come up to the links panel and click Edit Original, or I'll hold Alt on the keyboard and double click on the worksheet thumbnail, and the document will open in its own tab. What we can do here is instead of formatting the type from scratch in our letterhead, we can simply select the text frame with all its styles, copy it and paste it into our letterhead. What you'll see here is that the text format will remain exactly the same. And now over in the character and paragraph styles panel, we will see it will also carry across the styles. So we won't need to set this up from scratch because we've already done the work previously. All we have to do here is just reposition the text to work in our current template. So first I'm going to work with the contact details. Right now, below I have the frame with the address in. What I want to do now is get the address details in before it. So we're going to have to get into the text frame and make some tweaks. First, I'll come in and select the address. Then up in the control panel, over on the far right, we will see number of columns. I'll set this to 2. And then below, you may see the tagline cut across the 2 columns. Next, I'll select the tagline. Back up in the control panel, I'll click on span column and set this to 2. So now we have a single text frame with 2 columns above, and the tagline on the bottom is set to span across the 2 columns so it's nice and clean. Next, I'll place my mouse cursor at the start of the address and press enter to add a hard return. Now upon adding that hard return, we have applied the space after because we still have the address paragraph style applied to the start. To neutralize this, we can hit the basic paragraph style in the paragraph style panel to reset this. Next, I'll select the contact details from the frame above, copy and paste them in at the start. Now in this instance, the leading is the same, but the font is not the same size. In the business card, the type was smaller. So I'll press Escape to deselect any type, double click on the contact details paragraph style and change the font to 7 and click OK. Now you may notice that the address is starting directly under the contact details. What I want to do here is get this over to start in the other column. A really cool tip we can do here is to place the mouse cursor before the address, come up to type, come down to insert character break, click on column break, and that will push the text over into the next column. So now we have just one simple text frame with the columns above and the tagline below. Perfect. So now I'll click into the frame above, select the contact details and just delete them completely. I'll press Escape to deselect the type and select the frame. Up in the control panel, I'll hit the Align Top button. I'll place my frame to align to the top of the 5th row from the bottom. I'll drag the frame right across 3 columns and double click on the bottom middle anchor point to snap the text box up to fit the text perfectly. Nice. So to finish off the personalized letterhead, I'll drop in a signature. The download folder open, click into folder 4 project, into the design expo folder, into folder 1 media kit, into the asset folder, into the other folder, and I'll open the Mac signature document in Illustrator. Here I can select a vector signature, copy and then paste it into InDesign, position and scale, and that will complete the personalized version of the letterhead. With the new layout sorted, I can now simply come to the Pages panel, click on page 3, press and hold Shift and select page 4, right click, duplicate the spread, add new staff and contact details, and I can do this for as many permutations as I need. Perfect. So before we close off this tutorial, there is one last thing that is quite important to keep in mind, and that is style management. In this video, we have created various styles for various text formatting, and we also imported some styles from a different document. If we look in the character and paragraph styles panel, now we can see that we have a number of styles in folders. Now we could just leave it as is and move on, but if we want to be really organized, we can manage these styles. So I'll come into the paragraph panel and I'll just drag the tagline style into the header and titles folder. I'll drag the address style into the paragraph folder, and I'll drag the paragraph folder under the header and titles folder, and now they're all organized. Nice. So once you're happy with your design and you want to export ready for print, you can either export the entire document or you can export individual pages. For this example, I just want to export the second letterhead. So when you're ready to export, simply come up to File and click on Export, or press Command plus E on Mac or Control plus E on PC. I'll navigate to the project folder I saved previously in the course, click into the Publish folder, select the PDF folder, I'll name the file Mac Stevenson-letterhead, and down in the format, I'll choose Adobe PDF for print. I'll click Save and up will pop another menu. So here I'm going to make sure that for Adobe PDF preset, high quality print is selected. For pages, I'll select range and type 3-4. I'll make sure pages is selected. I'll make sure that View PDF after saving is checked, and then click Export. InDesign will do its thing, and up will pop Acrobat Reader. I'll zoom out a little and click the Pages tab, and here we can see we have a PDF doc with 2 pages front and back. This is now good to send off to the printer. Now you may also notice that the magenta text is not present in the PDF. Well, that is because, if you remember, on the layer options of the demo type, we unchecked the box for print layer. So when we export, we don't see the magenta text. However, let's say you wanted to send this letterhead to someone where you did want to include the text should they want to see the composition as a whole. This time, back into InDesign, I'll click Export again, though this time pay close attention to the Export Layers drop-down box. If we hit this, we can select all layers. This time, if we export, we will see the magenta text. So that's how you can create a letterhead design in InDesign and incorporate styles to make it very flexible to customize, drag styles in from other documents, and create multiple permutations. So over the previous tutorials, we have set up some simple documents looking at some very precise text formatting. Next, it's time to get a little bit more creative and start working with images and textures. In the next video, we're going to look at how we can manage multiple visual elements to create a brand motif we can use as part of our publication design. So I'll see you in the next video.